Tobias Redmont's hands trembled as he clutched the worn photograph of his wife and daughter, their faces frozen in a moment of joy that had been stolen 8 years ago. The wind howled outside his lonely ranch, rattling the shutters like a warning. For nearly a decade, he'd spoken only to his horses, the silence of his grief louder than any words. But that night, a storm brought something else. 10 Apache women, soaked and desperate, pounding on his door. Their pleas cut through the rain, sharp with fear, and Tobias knew the men chasing them were close, their boots heavy with murder. He sat by the fire, mending a bridle, when the knocking started. It wasn't gentle, not like a neighbor's tap. It was raw, urgent, the kind that carried the weight of life and death. Nobody came to his ranch anymore, not since he'd built walls of solitude around his heart. The knocks came again, louder, mixed with voices in Apache, a language that sent a chill down his spine. The last time he heard it, his family was still alive. His hand drifted to the rifle above the mantel, a reflex born from sleepless nights. But something stopped him. The voices weren't angry or threatening. They were broken, pleading. He moved to the door, each step heavy, the oak slab between him and the unknown vibrating with their desperation. A woman's voice, steady but carved with pain, spoke in English through the wood. "Please, we know you're there. We need shelter just for tonight." Tobias pressed his hand against the door, feeling the cold seep into his palm. 8 years of instinct screamed danger, not from the women, but from whatever drove them here in this storm. He thought of his wife, Sarah, who'd once told him kindness was what kept them human. But kindness had cost him everything when he'd trusted the wrong strangers years ago. "They're coming," the voice said again, closer now, like she was leaning against the door. "If you don't help us, we die. And when they find us at your gate, you die too." Tobias's fingers hovered over the iron bar, locking his door. It never lifted it for anyone in 8 years. But the certainty in her voice twisted something inside him. Out there, in the rain-soaked dark, men were coming. Men who wouldn't stop until blood stained the ground. The bar felt like it carried the weight of his past as he gripped it. When he finally lifted it, the creak of the hinges echoed like a warning. 10 women stood on his porch, their clothes torn, some bleeding, their eyes carrying stories of loss. The youngest, barely 16, held a baby whose breaths were faint in the cold. The oldest had silver in her hair and a gaze that had seen too much death. One woman stepped forward, blood dripping from a cut above her eye, her torn dress hanging off one shoulder. "I'm Ayanna," she said, her English slow but clear. "These are my sisters, my daughters, my people. We've been running for 3 days." Tobias opened his mouth, but stopped. The baby's pale lips silenced his questions. He stepped back. "Come in," he said, the words strange in his mouth. They slipped inside, shadows filling his small home with the smell of rain and fear. Ayanna was the last to enter, her voice low. "The soldiers hunting us are close. An hour, maybe less. They won't stop until we're all dead." Tobias barred the door again, knowing it wouldn't hold against what was coming. "Why?" he asked, turning to her. Ayanna's eyes met his, heavy with pain. "Because we fought back when they burned our village. Because we ran instead of dying. Because one of their officers wants us silent for what he did to my youngest sister." Tobias moved to the window, peering through the shutters into the storm. Nothing moved yet, but he knew better. Killers like these didn't need to be seen to be felt. He turned to the women, some tending wounds, others comforting the youngest. They weren't just survivors, they were fighters. "There's a cellar under the kitchen," he said to Ayanna. "Stone walls, hidden door. It could hold you all." She shook her head. "If they find us, you die with us. If they find an empty house, they might think you're innocent." Tobias almost laughed. "I stopped being innocent the day I bury my family. The only question is whether we run or make them pay." Ayanna's eyes flickered with something like hope. Outside, the storm softened, and with it, their cover. The faint sound of hooves in the mud grew louder, carrying the voices of men who thought their prey was trapped. The sound of hooves grew louder, slicing through the fading storm like a blade. Tobias gripped his rifle, the weight familiar but heavy with memories of a life he'd tried to leave behind. Ayana's words still hung in the air. Soldiers, an hour away, maybe less. But as he scanned the room, he saw the women weren't just waiting. They moved with purpose, pulling knives and small weapons from beneath their torn dresses. Ayana caught his stare and gave a sharp nod. "You thought we were helpless?" she said, her voice low but steady. "We've been fighting since they burned our homes." Tobias's stomach twisted. These weren't refugees. They were warriors, and they'd chosen his ranch for a reason. He opened his mouth to ask why, but a new sound stopped him cold. A sharp whistle from outside, not the wind but a signal. Ayana's eyes narrowed. "They're closer than I thought," she whispered. She gestured to the women, who spread out silently, taking positions near windows and the back door. Tobias realized they'd planned this, maybe for days. His home wasn't just a refuge. It was their battlefield. "How many men have you killed?" he asked Ayana, his voice steady despite the pounding in his chest. She didn't flinch. "Enough to know these soldiers won't expect us to fight back. They think we're scared women. They're wrong." Outside, a voice boomed through the rain. "Rancher, we know you're in there. Open the door, or we burn it down." Tobias peeked through the shutters. Shadows moved in the dark, 6, maybe 8 men, spreading out to surround the house. The voice belonged to a man named Morrison, Ayana had said, a captain who hunted Apache for sport. Tobias's grip tightened on his rifle. He knew men like Morrison, men who wore uniforms but acted like wolves. Ayana leaned close, her breath warm against his ear. "Morrison will come through the front. He likes to see fear in his prey. His men will hit the sides and back. Let them think they're winning." Tobias nodded, but a new thought hit him. "You knew I'd let you in," he said, his voice low. Ayana's lips twitched, not quite a smile. "We heard stories about a rancher who lost everything, but never stopped fighting. We gambled you'd help." The truth landed like a punch. They hadn't come to him by chance. They'd chosen him because of who he used to be, a man who fought back when the world took everything. Before he could respond, the front door shook under a heavy boot. "Last chance," Morrison shouted. Tobias glanced at Ayana. "What's the plan?" She held up a small, polished mirror. "When I flash this, take Morrison. We'll handle the rest." The door splintered as Morrison kicked it open, his rifle raised, his grin cruel in the firelight. But Tobias was ready. He stepped forward, his Winchester aimed at Morrison's chest. The captain froze, his confidence cracking for a split second. That was all Ayana needed. The mirror flashed, and the room erupted. Shadows moved, Apache women striking with blades, silent and deadly. Morrison's men, expecting fear, found steel instead. Grunts and thuds filled the air as soldiers fell, caught off guard by women they'd underestimated. Tobias kept his aim on Morrison, but before he could pull the trigger, Ayana was there, her knife sliding into the captain's side. "For my sister," she whispered. Morrison gasped, his eyes wide with shock, and crumpled to the floor. But the victory was short-lived. Hooves thundered outside, louder than before. Torchlight flickered through the broken door. More soldiers, at least a dozen. Morrison wasn't the leader. He was the scout. The real force was here now. Ayana pulled her blade free, her face grim. "More are coming," she said. Tobias's heart sank. They want to fight, but the war was just starting. He glanced at Morrison's body, then at the women, some bloodied but standing tall. "We can't fight that many," he said. Ayana's eyes met his. "We don't run. We don't hide. We end this tonight." But as she spoke, a new sound cut through the night, a baby's cry, not from the Apache child inside, but from somewhere outside in the soldiers' camp. Tobias froze. One of the soldiers had brought a child into this bloodshed, and that changed everything. The baby's cry pierced the night, sharp and desperate, pulling Tobias's heart like a rope. Rain still dripped through the broken door where Morrison's body lay, blood pooling on the floorboards. The new hoofbeats grew louder, torches flickering closer, but that cry, small, helpless, and so close, changed everything. Tobias lowered his rifle, his hands shaking not from fear, but from memory. 8 years ago, he'd held his own daughter as she took her last breath, And now another child was out there, caught in a fight that wasn't theirs. Ayana's eyes locked on his, hard and unyielding. "It could be a trick," she said, her voice low. "Soldiers use lies to make you weak." But Tobias shook his head. He knew that cry was real, raw with terror, just like his daughters had been. He glanced at the Apache women, some wiping blood from their knives, others watching the windows for the new soldiers. They'd fought like wolves, but their faces showed the same fear he felt. Not for themselves, but for the innocent caught in this mess. "We can't ignore that child," he said. Ayana's jaw tightened. "My sister's baby is here, in this house. Her life matters too." Her words hit hard, and Tobias felt the weight of it. Every choice now was a gamble between one life and another. He looked at the young girl, clutching the Apache baby, her eyes wide but fierce. She'd seen too much for 16, just like he'd seen too much for 40. Outside, the new soldiers shouted orders, their voices sharp through the thinning rain. "Spread out. Check the barn," one yelled. Tobias guessed they'd found Morrison's men, dead in the mud. Time was slipping away. He turned to Ayana. "If we fight, that baby out there dies. If we run, they chase us forever. There's another way." Her eyes narrowed. "What?" He moved to a corner. System. Locked cabinet he hadn't opened in years, pulling out a dusty crate. "My ranch is on a hill," he said, unwrapping oiled cloth from sticks of dynamite. "There's a dam up the creek. Built it to stop floods. Break it now, and the valley below fills with water in minutes." Ayana's breath caught. "You destroy your home?" Tobias looked around his cabin, the walls that had held his grief for 8 years. "It's just a place. Lives matter more." He handed her a fuse. "We draw them close, then blow the dam. They drown, we live." The baby's cry came again, weaker, and Tobias's heart twisted. He pictured a child out there, cold and scared, maybe in a soldier's wagon. Ayana grabbed his arm. "What if it's one of theirs? A soldier's kid?" Her voice was sharp, but her eyes showed doubt. She'd heard it too. Tobias set the dynamite down. "No dam. Not yet. We get that baby first." One of the women hissed, "You're choosing their child over ours?" Her anger burned, but Tobias met her gaze. "I'm choosing to keep us human. We save that kid, then we fight smart." He led them to another cabinet, pulling out caltrops and tripwires, tools from his darker days. "This place is a trap," he said. "I made it that way after I lost everything. Spikes in the grass, wires in the dark. They won't see them coming." Ayana nodded slowly, understanding. "We split them up," she said. "Make them think we're cornered." Tobias agreed. "You and 4 others make noise at the front. Me and the rest go around, find that baby, hit their backline." The plan was crazy, but it was all they had. Ayana's team started shouting and banging furniture, drawing the soldiers' attention. Tobias slipped out the back with 3 women, moving through the muddy dark. The baby's cry grew clearer, coming from a wagon near the house. A woman, not a soldier, huddled beside it, whispering to a squirming bundle. Tobias signaled his group to stay low. He stepped forward, rifle low but ready. "Easy," he called to a guard who spotted him. "Morrison sent me to check the wagon." The lie worked for a moment. The guard hesitated, then frowned. "You ain't Army." Tobias swung his rifle, knocking him out cold. The woman looked up, clutching her baby, her face pale with fear. "Don't hurt her," she begged. "Mary, right?" Tobias said softly. "I'm Tobias. I'm getting you out. When the shooting starts, run to the trees. Follow the creek to a trading post 5 miles south. Say my name." She nodded, tears mixing with rain. A shout came from another guard, but the Apache women moved like shadows, silencing him with a blade. The wagon was clear, and Mary ran into the night with her child. But then, silence fell over the house. No more gunfire or shouting from Ayana's group. Tobias's blood ran cold. Were they dead? Alive? Before he could think, a new voice roared from the dark. "This is Colonel Bradley. Surrender, or we burn you out." Tobias's heart sank. Morrison was just the start. Bradley, the real leader, had them surrounded with dozens of men. They were trapped, and the baby they'd saved was only the beginning of the fight. The silence from the house was like a knife in Tobias's chest. Ayana and her women had stopped their noise, and he couldn't tell if they'd won or lost. Colonel Bradley's voice boomed again, cold and sure. "You're surrounded. Give up now, or we'll drag you out in chains." Tobias crouched in the muddy dark, the three Apache women beside him tense and ready. The baby's mother, Mary, was gone, running toward the trees with her child, but the fight was far from over. Torches spread out around the ranch, at least 30 soldiers moving into position. Bradley wasn't like Morrison. He was careful, smart, and had numbers on his side. Tobias's plan to trap them was crumbling fast. He whispered to the women, "We need to get back to the house. Find out if Ayana's alive." The oldest, her silver hair glinting in the faint torchlight, nodded. "If they're dead, we finish what they started." Her voice was steady, but her eyes held the same pain Tobias carried, loss that never faded. They crept through the shadows, dodging the soldiers' patrols. The rain had stopped, leaving the ground slick and treacherous. Tobias knew every inch of this land, every dip where a man could hide, every spot where his traps waited. A soldier stepped too close to a hidden caltrop and stifled a curse as it pierced his boot. Tobias held his breath, but the man limped on, unaware of the eyes watching him. As they neared the house, a new sound froze them. A sharp cry, not a baby's this time, but a young man's voice, scared and pleading. "Father, please. They've got me." Tobias's heart raced. Bradley's son was inside, a prisoner. Ayana's voice answered, clear and fierce. "Your boy lived for now, Colonel, but you'll pay for what you've done." The words carried weight, and Tobias felt a spark of hope. Ayana was alive, and she'd turned the tables. He signaled the women to move faster, slipping through a side door into the house. Inside, the scene was chaos. 2 Apache women lay dead in the corner, their blood staining the floor. Ayana stood in the center, her knife pressed to the throat of a young man in a lieutenant's uniform. He was barely 20, his face pale, his eyes wide with fear. "Tobias," Ayana said, her voice tight. "This is Bradley's son. He thought he could sneak in the back. He was wrong." The boy tried to speak, but Ayana pressed the blade closer, drawing a thin line of blood. "Quiet," she snapped. The other women watched the windows, their weapons ready, but Tobias saw the cost of their fight. They were fewer now and tired. "What do you want with him?" Tobias asked, keeping his rifle aimed at the door. Ayana's eyes burned. "His father burned our village, killed our families. This boy wears their uniform. He pays too." The lieutenant whimpered. "I didn't know. Father said you were raiders, attacking settlers." Tobias stepped closer, studying the boy's face. He saw fear, but also confusion, like he was waking up to a truth he'd never questioned. "Did you see what your father's men did?" Tobias asked. The boy swallowed. "I saw bodies. Women, children. I thought they were fighting back." Ayana's hand shook, her knife steady, but her anger raw. "You thought wrong. Your father lied to you, to everyone." Tobias put a hand on her arm. "Killing him won't bring your sister back, but his words might. If he talks, Bradley falls." Ayana's eyes flicked to his, torn between rage and reason. Outside, Bradley's voice roared again. "Give me my son, or I'll burn this place to ash." Tobias heard the soldiers moving closer, boots splashing in the mud. Time was running out. Then, a new noise, horses galloping fast, and voices that didn't belong to Bradley's men. Tobias peeked through a broken shutter. New riders, maybe 10, wore badges that glinted in the torchlight. Federal marshals. Someone had been watching Bradley, and this fight had drawn their attention. Ayana's grip on the boy tightened. "If they're here for justice, they'll hear the truth," Tobias said. "But we need him alive." The boy's eyes met Tobias's, pleading. "I'll tell them everything," he whispered. "I swear." Ayana hesitated, then lowered her knife, just enough. The marshal's arrival was a twist none of them expected, but it came with a price. Truth would have to fight its way out, and not everyone would survive the night. The marshal's hooves thundered closer, their badges flashing in the torchlight, but Tobias felt no relief. The house was a trap now, surrounded by Bradley soldiers and these new arrivals who might not care about truth. Ayana stood over the young lieutenant, her knife still close to his throat, her eyes burning with doubt. If these marshals are honest, they'll listen, Tobias said, his voice low. If not, we're dead anyway. The boy, Bradley's son, nodded frantically. I'll tell them what father did. The villages, the killings, everything. Ayana's hand shook, but she didn't lower the blade. Words won't bring my sister back, she said, her voice breaking. Outside, Bradley's shouts grew desperate. You've got my boy. Let him go, and I'll pull my men back. Tobias knew better than to trust him. Men like Bradley didn't keep promises. They built careers on lies. He glanced at the remaining Apache women, their faces set, ready to fight or die. The two bodies in the corner weighed on him, a reminder of the cost. He turned to Ayana. We need a plan. The marshals might help, but we have to survive until they get here. She nodded, her jaw tight. We hold the house. Make them come to us. Tobias moved to the front window, peering through the shattered shutters. Bradley's men were close, their rifles glinting in the torchlight. The marshals were dismounting now, shouting orders that clashed with Bradley's. Stand down, Colonel, a new voice called deep and firm. This is Marshal Kane. We're here for answers, not blood. Tobias's heart jumped. Answers meant a chance, but only if they could keep Bradley's son alive. He turned to the boy. What's your name? James, the lieutenant whispered, his voice shaking. James Bradley. Before Tobias could respond, a gunshot cracked from outside, and a bullet splintered the wall near his head. Bradley's men weren't waiting. They're shooting, one of the Apache women yelled, ducking low. Ayana pulled James to the floor, her knife still at his neck. Your father's trying to kill us all, she hissed. James's eyes widened. He wouldn't. Not with me here. But his voice faltered, doubt creeping in. Tobias crawled to the back door, checking for movement. The marshals were spreading out, caught between Bradley's soldiers and the house. It was chaos, and chaos was their only chance. Then came the twist. One of the Apache women, the youngest, gasped and pointed to the shadows near the fireplace. Look, she whispered. A trapdoor, barely visible, was ajar. Someone had opened it from below. Tobias's blood ran cold. He'd never told anyone about the cellar's second entrance, hidden under a rug. Someone else was in the house. He raised his rifle, heart pounding, as a figure climbed out, covered in mud. It was Mary, the cook, her baby gone. Her eyes were wild, her voice a sob. They took her. Bradley's men found me in the trees. They took my daughter. Tobias's stomach dropped. The baby they'd saved was back in a soldier's hands, a new bargaining chip for Bradley. Why'd you come back? He asked, his voice sharp. Mary clutched his arm. I heard the marshals. I thought they could help. I didn't know where else to go. Ayana's face hardened. She led them to us, she said, her knife twitching toward James. This is your father's doing. James shook his head, tears in his eyes. I didn't know. I swear, I didn't know he'd do this. Another gunshot tore through the night, and the marshal shouted again. Hold your fire, Bradley. We got orders from the governor. Tobias realized the truth in a flash. Bradley wasn't just fighting them. He was defying the marshals, desperate to cover his crimes. The colonel's men were loyal, but the arrival of Kane's team was splitting their focus. Tobias grabbed Mary's shoulder. Where's your baby now? She pointed toward the soldiers' camp. In a wagon, near the barn. They're guarding her. Ayana's eyes met Tobias's. We get the child, we get leverage, she said. But we're running out of time. Tobias nodded, his mind racing. You and James stay here. Keep the marshals talking. I'll take 2 women and get the baby. It was a desperate plan, but the thought of that child in Bradley's hands pushed him forward. As he slipped out the back with the 2 Apache women, he heard Bradley's voice again, colder now. You've got 10 minutes to send my son out, or I burn everything and everyone. The marshal's arrival had bought them time, but Mary's return and the stolen baby had raised the stakes. Tobias moved through the dark, knowing one wrong step could end it all. Tobias slipped through the muddy dark, the 2 Apache women moving like ghosts beside him. Mary's words echoed in his head. Her baby was in a wagon near the barn, guarded by Bradley's men. The air was thick with tension, the marshal's shouts clashing with Bradley's orders. 10 minutes, the colonel had screamed, his voice cracking with rage. Tobias knew Bradley wouldn't wait. The man was cornered, his crimes exposed by his own son, and now he'd taken child to keep control. Tobias's boots sank into the mud as he led the women toward the barn, his rifle heavy in his hands. Every shadow felt like a threat, every sound a warning. The barn loomed ahead, its outline faint in the torchlight. Tobias spotted the wagon, 2 soldiers standing guard, their rifles ready. The baby's faint cries carried through the night, twisting his heart. He thought of his daughter, her tiny hand cold in his years ago. He couldn't let another child die. "Stay low," he whispered to the women. One, a wiry fighter named Kala, nodded, her knife glinting. The other, silent but steady, gripped a small axe. "We take them quiet," Kala said. "No shots, or we bring the whole camp." Tobias agreed, his mind racing. The marshals were close, but if they alerted Bradley's men now, the baby was done for. They crept closer, using the barn's shadow for cover. Tobias saw the guards' faces. Young, nervous, not like Morrison's killers. They didn't want to be here. He signaled Kala to circle left while he moved right. The plan was simple: distract and strike. Tobias tossed a pebble into the dark, and it clattered against a fence. One guard turned, muttering, "What was that?" The other stepped forward, rifle raised. Kala moved like lightning, her knife silencing the first before he could shout. Tobias tackled the second, slamming his rifle but into the man's jaw. He crumpled without a sound. The wagon was clear. Tobias reached it, his heart pounding. The baby lay in a blanket, eyes wide, her cries soft but urgent. "Shoo, little one," he whispered, lifting her gently. Her warmth against his chest felt like a memory he'd buried. But as he turned to signal Kala, a new voice froze him. "Drop her, rancher, or you're dead." A soldier stepped from the barn shadows, his pistol aimed at Tobias's head. Kala and the other woman were too far to help. Tobias's rifle was slung, useless now. The soldier's hand shook, but his eyes were hard. "Bradley said no witnesses," he said. "Put the kid down." Tobias's mind raced. The marshals were near, their voices louder now, arguing with Bradley's men. He had seconds to act. "You don't want this," he said, keeping his voice calm. "You're young. You got a life ahead. Shooting me and a baby won't let you sleep at night." The soldier hesitated, his pistol dipping slightly. "Orders are orders," he muttered, but doubt cracked his voice. Tobias took a slow step forward, the baby still in his arms. Orders from a man who burns villages? Who lies to his own son? The soldier's eyes flickered, torn between fear and shame. Before he could answer, Kala struck, her knife flashing from the dark. The soldier gasped, dropping his pistol as he fell. Tobias clutched the baby tighter, his heart racing. "We've got to move," Kala whispered. They ran toward the trees, the baby quiet now, as if sensing safety. But as they reached cover, a shout came from the house. "They've got my son," Bradley roared. "Burn it down." Gunfire erupted, and Tobias saw flames licking the edges of his ranch. Ayanna and the others were still inside, with James as their shield. The marshals shouted for a ceasefire, but Bradley's men ignored them, their torches spreading fire. Tobias handed the baby to Kala. "Get her to the creek. Find Mary." Kala nodded, disappearing with the child. Tobias turned back, his home burning, his past going up in flames. But another twist hit him. A marshal's voice, closer now, called his name. "Tobias Redmont. We know you're out there. Come out, or we assume you're with them." Tobias froze. The marshals weren't just after Bradley. They thought he was part of this, a traitor hiding killers. His choice to help the Apache had made him a target. With the house burning and Ayanna trapped, he had to decide, save himself or fight for the truth, no matter the cost. Flames climbed the walls of Tobias's ranch, the firelight painting the night red as gunfire echoed. The marshal's voice rang out again, sharp and accusing. "Tobias Redmont, show yourself, or we're coming in." Tobias crouched in the trees, his heart pounding, the smell of smoke choking the air. His home, his sanctuary for 8 years, was burning, and Ayanna was still inside with Bradley's son, James. The marshals thought Tobias was a traitor, and Bradley's men were out for blood. Every choice now felt like a step toward death, but running wasn't an option, not with lives on the line. He slipped back toward the house, staying low, the heat of the fire stinging his face. The Apache woman with him, silent but fierce, followed close, her axe ready. Ayana's still fighting, she whispered. We don't leave her. Tobias nodded, his mind racing. The marshals complicated everything. They weren't just after Bradley. They were after anyone tied to this fight. He had to get to Ayana, but the soldiers were closing in, their torches spreading the fire. A new sound hit him. James's voice, shaky but loud from inside. Father, stop. I'm telling them everything. Tobias froze. The boy was breaking, spilling Bradley's secrets to save himself. Tobias reached the back door, now half-charred, and peered inside. Ayana stood in the main room, her knife still at James's throat, but her face was pale, sweat mixing with blood from her wounds. Two Apache women guarded the windows, their eyes sharp despite the smoke. Tobias, Ayana hissed, spotting him. The marshals are talking, but Bradley's men won't stop. They want us dead before the truth comes out. James trembled, his voice cracking. I told them about the villages, the killings. Father lied to me, to all of us. Ayana's grip tightened. Your truth won't save us now. A bullet shattered a window, glass spraying the floor. Tobias ducked, pulling the Apache woman down with him. We can't stay here, he said. The fire's spreading. Ayana's eyes met his, fierce but tired. If we run, they shoot us. If we stay, we burn. Tobias's mind flashed to the dynamite he'd left by the front door, still wrapped in cloth. It was a desperate idea, but it might buy them time. The dam, he said. We blow it, flood the valley, stop Bradley's men. Ayana shook her head. The marshals are down there too. We'd kill them. Before Tobias could argue, a new twist stopped him cold. A woman's scream came from outside. Not Mary's, but someone new. He risked a glance through the broken shutters. A figure stumbled into the firelight, hands tied, her dress torn. It was Sarah's sister, Clara, a face Tobias hadn't seen since his wife's funeral 8 years ago. Bradley's men pushed her forward, using her as a shield. Redmont, Bradley shouted. You know this woman. Send out my son, or she dies. Tobias's blood turned to ice. Clara, alive, here, after all these years, Bradley had found her, dragged her into this to break him. Ow! Tobias whispered, his voice shaking. Clara's eyes met his through the flames, wide with fear but defiant. They took me from town, she called. Knew you'd help these women. Bradley had planned this, knowing Tobias's past, using his family's memory against him. Ayana's face hardened. He's playing your heart, she said. Don't fall for it. But Tobias's hand shook. Clara was the last piece of Sarah he had left. He couldn't let her die. Not like this. The marshals shouted again, their voices closer. Bradley, stand down. You're under arrest. But the colonel laughed, cold and unhinged. You think you can stop me? I own this territory. Gunfire erupted, not at the house, but between Bradley's men and the marshals. The chaos was their chance, but Clara's presence changed everything. Tobias turned to Ayana. I'm getting her. You hold James, keep the marshals talking. Ayana grabbed his arm. You go out there, you're dead. Tobias met her gaze. I lost my family once. I won't lose her too. He grabbed the dynamite, knowing the next move could end them all, but Clara's scream and James's truth were pulling him into the fire. The fire roared, swallowing Tobias's ranch as smoke stung his eyes. Clara's scream echoed, her figure trembling in the grip of Bradley's men, a living ghost from his past. Inside, Ayana held James at knife point, her face set with resolve, while the remaining Apache women braced for the end. Gunfire cracked outside, marshals and soldiers locked in a chaotic fight. Tobias clutched the dynamite, his heart torn between saving Clara, protecting the women, and ensuring the truth survived. Bradley's voice cut through the noise. Last chance, Redmont. My son or she dies. Tobias's hand shook, memories of Sarah flooding back. Her smile, her belief in doing right, no matter the cost. He turned to Ayana. Keep James talking to the marshals. I'm getting Clara. Her eyes flashed. You'll die out there. Tobias met her gaze. If I don't try, I'm already dead. He slipped out the back, the dynamite heavy in his coat. The marshal's shouts grew louder, their bullets pinning Bradley's men. Tobias used the chaos, creeping toward Clara. She stood near a soldier, her hands bound, her face bruised but fierce. "Tobias," she whispered as he neared. He raised a finger to his lips, then struck the soldier with his rifle, but catching Clara as she stumbled forward. "You're safe," he said, cutting her ropes. But Bradley saw them. "Kill them," he roared, and a soldier fired, the bullet grazing Tobias's arm. Pain seared through him, but he pulled Clara into the trees. "Run to the creek," he told her. "Find Mary and her baby." Clara hesitated, tears in her eyes. "You're all I have left of Sarah." Tobias pushed her gently. "Go. Live for her." She ran, disappearing into the dark. Tobias turned back, blood dripping down his sleeve, the dynamite still in hand. The marshals were gaining ground, their leader, Kane, shouting for Bradley to surrender. But the colonel was unhinged, his men firing wildly, the fire spreading to the barn. Tobias knew the dam was his last play. He sprinted toward the creek, dodging bullets, his boots slipping in the mud. The Apache women inside were counting on him, and James's confession was their only hope for justice. He reached the dam, a small structure he'd built years ago, and set the dynamite, lighting the fuse. "This is for you, Sarah," he whispered, thinking of her kindness, her strength. The explosion shook the ground, and water roared down the valley, sweeping away Bradley's camp. Screams followed as soldiers scrambled, caught in the flood. The marshals, higher up, were safe, but Bradley's force was broken. Tobias staggered back to the house, the fire now a dying glow. Ayanna and the women were outside, James still with them, his hands raised as marshals surrounded them. Kane approached, his face grim but fair. "Redmont, you've got a lot to answer for." Tobias nodded, exhausted. "So does he," he said, pointing to James. The young lieutenant stepped forward, his voice steady now. "My father ordered the murders of Apache families. I saw it. I'll testify." Bradley, soaked and disarmed, glared at his son, but the marshals cuffed him, his power gone. Dawn broke, painting the sky gold over the ruined ranch. Ayanna and her women stood together, their faces heavy with loss but strong with survival. The marshals promised them protection, a chance to rebuild. Clara returned with Mary and her baby, both safe, their eyes full of gratitude. Tobias watched them, his home gone, but his heart lighter. "Where will you go?" Ayanna asked him. He looked west, toward open land. "Somewhere new," he said. "To build again. To protect what matters." Ayanna nodded, a small smile breaking through. "You're a good man, Tobias." As the Apache women rode north and Tobias prepared to guide Mary and Clara to safety, he felt Sarah's voice in his heart. Kindness wasn't weakness. It was the courage to fight for others, even when it cost everything. The lesson was clear. In a world full of cruelty, choosing to stay human, to stand for the helpless, was the only way to heal. Years later, stories spread of the night a rancher and 10 Apache women faced an army and won, not with hate, but with truth and sacrifice. Tobias walked west, his past burned away, but his future alive with purpose.